Well, hello and welcome. I'm Barry Windbott and this is Tinycast. I'm going to talk about conflict. Now, this is not a topic that people seem to be very happy talking about, and yet it's a topic that we cannot avoid in life. In fact, we'll all be caught up in conflict, large and small, at some point in our lives, frequently. In fact, we'll all be caught up in conflict several times, perhaps weekly, daily, monthly. Now, in conflict, I'm talking about maybe disagreements, maybe huge flare-ups, maybe niggles, just a conflict of interests that hasn't actually developed into a head-to-head battle yet, or maybe it never will. But conflict is omnipresent. It's always there in our lives. It's something which, as human beings, like any other species, we're going to have conflict, and more importantly, evolution and nature have endowed us with qualities for dealing with conflict. And yet, we don't like it, we don't like dealing with it, we avoid it, and when we do have to deal with it, we bungle it. Not only do we bungle it, sometimes we do so badly at it, it escalates. Now, in terms of conflict, it could be a marital dispute, it could be a small disagreement with a colleague, it could be a major disagreement with your employer, it could even be a war. And there's one really important thing that I'm going to bring up about this shortly, because I started studying conflict, I don't know, must have been the 1980s at some time, when I was sent to Russia to resolve a commercial dispute with a Russian organization, between a Russian organization as it was at that time and a Franco-German company in Europe. And that was my job, to smooth things out and find a way through. And I did. Furthermore, I found it was really enjoyable work. And what did I do? I just made friends with lots of people. Now, I'm oversimplifying, but I realized that the heart of this conflict was the relationship and how we conducted ourselves. It was not about what the dispute was about, which in this case was money. There was a sum of about 40 million French francs at that time that was in dispute. They wouldn't pay the bill, basically, because they said the contract hadn't been completed and everything hadn't been delivered. So that was my job, to resolve that. It took 5 months, and we did it, myself with a team, and I was project leader on that. So I was very proud of that. But above all, I made a really firm friend out of my adversary, who happened to be somebody Russian, or one of the Russian states at that time. And we got a conclusion together because we collaborated. So I think the important message that we so often miss out on is that every conflict, whatever it's about, it could be a marital dispute, it could be a war, it could be a fight with one of your kids, every dispute, every conflict, if there is any sort of resolution or settlement or agreement, after all, we all have to rub along together in the end. Even if it's nation states at war with each other, they still have to get on globally eventually. And every conflict will end in talking. It won't end because somebody's bigger or somebody's stronger or somebody's got more money. That might be what draws the activity to a close. But if the relationship is to continue in any form, business, political, personal, talking will be the route to that, being able to rub along together and actually make something work collaboratively. So that was something I learned very early in my experience of dealing with conflict. And at that time, I wasn't trained. So I went away and got trained, and then eventually I was teaching the topic at the university in London. So I got to think about conflict a lot, and still do. And human beings are about the only species who will prolong a conflict for no good reason. We're the only species that does that. Most species settle the dispute, somebody wins, somebody loses, and maybe somebody goes off and licks their wounds, maybe somebody dies, but it's settled. And they don't come back and turn it into a vendetta. It's not how it works in nature. But we human beings have a knack of making things last, nursing our wounds, keeping the hurt and the pain alive, dragging out the conflict. And sometimes that's years and years and years. Other times in a marital dispute, it might be a matter of hours. days or weeks, or it might lead to the demise of the relationship. My point is, and the point I really want to make today, it doesn't matter what the conflict is about, it always ends in talking. For all practical purposes, that's all you need to know. Yeah, I know they said this, you did that, you're right, they're wrong. Yeah, I know all of that. But the bottom line is, if there's ever going to be a solution or a resolution or a thing that enables you to rub along together and do what you have to do together, coexist in other words, it is through communication. It's through talking. That's the message for today. This has been Tinycast. I'm Barry Wimbold. You can find me on YouTube and all the usual channels. And guess what? You can now WhatsApp me. If you have a question, just WhatsApp me on Tinycast. That's all you need to put in, Tinycast. It'll find me. WhatsApp your question, your comment, whatever it happens to be. Thank you for listening. That's all from me today. Goodbye.